Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. It's been disintegrating under intense scrutiny, so we've lost the cover, but we still have the pages, the content of the Arabic-only Quran, which is the one we're going to be talking about so that we can figure out what's in Islam and how does it affect us as non-believers in our lives today. So, as I always do before I start, I'm going to tell you now, if you have any doubts or questions, please buy and translate one of these. An Arabic-only Quran looks like that, because it's not the same as the English one. The English one has many parts removed or changed, but it's not the word of Allah. Allah only speaks in Arabic, and he says that the English one is the work of Satan, which is going to be topical for today's chat. So, translate and read the Arabic-only one, and then fact-check me by that, and I hope you do, because once you've done so, you'll recognise everything I'm about to tell you now from my notes right here is 100% true of the word of Allah and what Muslims believe today. So, been keeping up with the series, and you saw the last few. You'll remember we've been going through AL-NIISA, the book of women and children, and how the women teach the children, mainly about jihad, but some other things too. But we're past the bit about the jihad, now we're to the bit about the punishments. And what we are finding out very, very quickly is that Allah and Satan are like stuck together. So if you've got one and then you turn around, you'll get the other. It's very, very suspicious to me how they seem to be working in tandem. It's almost like they're the same guy. But anyway, that's where we left off. So let's pick up from where we were yesterday. Sorry, you'll have to bear with me. I have a little touch of hay fever today as well. So that's going to be, well, we'll deal with it. So let's carry on. 118. Allah curses the infidel with Satan, and he said, "Surely I will take from your servants a predetermined portion." That's Satan's voice. "They will be misguided away by Satan's trickery." End of verse. So if we break this down, 118, Allah curses the infidel with Satan. So what that means is, Satan is like living in a cupboard at Allah's house. And then when he curses the infidel, he goes, "Come on, Satan, out you come. Go and curse the infidels for me, because you are under my command. Thusly, you are a Muslim." And this is backed up by several hadiths and actually later portions of the Quran that Satan is actually a Muslim. He becomes a Muslim. So we know that Satan is a Muslim under the command of Allah. And that's why Allah curses the infidel with Satan. And then Satan says, "Surely I will take from your servants a predetermined portion." So what that means is, Satan is going to take a predetermined portion of Muslims, who are his servants, away, and they're going to be misguided away from Islam by Satan's trickery. So what he's talking about here is the apostates of Islam, of which there are many. And an apostate is someone who, it means something different in Islam, so we'll stick to the Islamic one. In here, the Quran of the Muslims, I forgot to do that. In the Quran of the Muslims, an apostate is someone who previously was Islamic, but then left. You know, an ex-Muslim is an apostate. So that's what they're talking about here. Satan's predetermined portion are ex-Muslims, who of course Allah has preordained would leave. It was totally part of the plan. Trust me, bro, says Allah in his book. But I think what we can tell from this is Allah is well aware that there are going to be a portion of people who read his book, get to the end of it, understand it all, and then decide, this guy is talking nonsense. And that guy is actually the one who's true. And they're going to leave, and they're probably going to become Christians, which is why he spent a large proportion of his book slagging off the Christians, because they definitely won't want to be Jews, because they've already dug a grave for the Jews and said, we're going to kill them all. So the only option they have left is Christianity. And that's what he's talking about here. Any Islamic people who leave and wish to be Christians are the ones who are going to be tricked by Satan, who is Allah. And we move on. 119. This is still Satan talking. "I shall lead them astray, and I will stir their deepest desires. I will command them to cut their ears off their livestock, and command them to alter Allah's creation. Whoever does follow Satan instead of Allah, indeed will suffer a great loss." End of verse. So, it's a bit of a weird way to write something. He split the two verses, so they're not one verse, they're two, 108 and 119, but there's a quote that goes from one to the other. That's why we have to do them in the silly voice. So what is Satan saying here? Because remember, this is a quote bubble from Satan talking, with Allah commanding him to go out and do this. So The setup is you've got Allah commanding Satan, and Satan is talking to Muslims through the Quran of the Muslims. That's actually true, by the way. Satan is quoted in here as instructing Muslims. That's what he's currently doing. And he's commanding them to be apostates. Because remember, Allah wrote everyone's path. And he's even said here, I will take from your servants a predetermined portion. So Allah would have been the one who predetermined the portion who became apostates. Even though Satan's trickery has misguided them to get there, Allah's the one that wrote the misguiding doctrines that the Satan is using. And this is further evidence that Satan is a Muslim and Allah has created him and they are the same person. But anyway, he goes on. I will command them to cut the ears of their livestock. See, again, he references Christians because he's called us the rabble shepherds. And the reason he calls us rabble shepherds is because generally we don't want to go to war. We'd rather work the fields. And that's a technology that was engineered by Christians. How do you keep control of your flock? How do you know which ones are yours and which ones are just random new sheep you found? You cut a little bit off the ear of the sheep because they don't mind. They barely feel it. When they're a baby, don't feel it at all. Then you can spot, this is one of my ones because it's got a little ear cut thing. So that's what Satan is referring to here when he says, I will command them to cut the ears of their livestock. Allah has recognised, hang on, these Christians, they're doing this ear thing, but I don't understand why they're doing it. He doesn't get it. He doesn't know that that's why they're doing it. So he thinks Satan is commanding them to do it just because he's cutting the ear off. He doesn't realise there's a reason why they're doing that. It's like circumcision. He doesn't understand why that works, although he demands that his Muslims do it. When he's demanding his Muslims do it, he thinks it's a sexual thing. He doesn't realise that circumcision is synonymous with baptism. But anyway, so Satan commands them to cut the ears off their livestock and commands them to alter Allah's creation. And he says in his own voice now, outside of a speech bubble in the narration, this is Allah, whoever does follow Satan instead of Allah indeed will suffer great losses. So what he means there is, when he's talking about the livestock, if you follow Allah, Allah will look after you, your livestock won't be taken from you, the goods that you have in your life won't be taken, and you'll be living a good life. But if you are part of the predetermined portion that follows Satan, that he has commanded that you are in sin, you're born with an evil soul, if you're Christian, indeed, you will suffer a great loss. And how you will suffer that great loss is Satan will command the infidels. And he will also be commanding the Muslims to go and attack the infidels. So even though that's not written, that's expressly what is in the narrative here. So let's recap on 118 and 119. Allah curses the infidels with Satan, who works for Allah, who is the same being, just with a disguise on. Allah pops out the cupboard of, Satan pops out the cupboard of Allah and goes, surely I will take from your servants a predetermined portion. And the predetermined portion is the apostates who become Christians. They're misguided to do that by Satan, not by Allah, even though Allah said at the beginning it was his guidance that led everyone and he's the one that predetermines everything. Now we know Satan is predetermining some of it at least because Allah has just told us that. Then in 119, Satan says, I shall lead them astray, I will stir their deepest desires. So how Satan, through Allah, is controlling these apostates who become Christians is by controlling their desires. Now, isn't that weird how he controls the desires of the sinful guys, i.e. their sexual desires, but the ultimate prize in Islam is 72 virgins, so he commands his good ones in the same exact way. He even goes as far as commanding his Muslims via their desire for 72 Muslims in the hereafter. Because we know that's the ultimate prize. You shall have 72 virgins, O good Muslims, but you infidels shall not have 72 virgins. You shall have ever fire. That's what he said in the last one. So we know that Satan and Allah are exactly the same being, using exactly the same tactics, in exactly the same way, but just with a different voice on for Satan. And Allah sounds like this. But it's literally a mask and plastic horns. It's the same guy. And we move on. 120. Satan makes many promises and stirs with your desires. Satan deceives you with your own foolish pride, O Muslim. End of verse. So that's interesting, isn't it? So we break this one down. This is Allah narrating. Allah is saying of Satan, who he seems to know an awful lot about and is in control of and is actually using as an employee and who is a Muslim, remember. Allah says of Satan, Satan makes many promises and stirs you with your desires. Now, once again, who else do we know in the Quran of the Muslims who also does this, who also makes many promises to stir your desires, but then doesn't actually fulfill them? Well, I'd cast your minds back to the very beginning of the Quran, when Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, you know, God's paradise above, not the one he's going to create down here, the real one. Adam and Eve are there, and how Allah interacts with Adam is he surrounds Adam with his angels, and he says, Adam, you are not very clever. I can teach you the hidden secrets of heaven and earth. All you must do is learn and repeat my words. And he tricks Adam with these hidden secrets of heaven and earth. But at first, Adam doesn't actually want them. That's why he doesn't get them himself without Allah's interjection. So how does Allah trick Adam into the heaven and earth hidden secrets? Well, he says, Adam, you will be truth, you will be courage, beauty and wisdom, you will be higher than the angels, and then we will stop picking on you and surrounding you, and you will be the king of heaven. So Allah, in the first part of the Quran, does this exact thing to Adam, which causes original sin and makes earth populated with humans when previously God was happy for them to just mill around in Eden with free food and water, with no threat of death from animals, living forever in innocence and peace. Allah describes this as a state of felicity, which means, you know, forever happiness. So that only ends because Allah makes many promises and stirs your desires and then lies and you don't get them. So when we look at 120, Satan makes many promises and stirs your desires. Satan deceives you with your own foolish pride, O Muslim. This is what happened to Adam. But he's just forgotten that we're still... You know, we're able to remember that. So what we can see here, if we break it down in summary, Satan making promises and stirring your desires to deceive you with your own foolish pride is exactly what Allah does. So this is further evidence that Allah and Satan are the same being, or at least are identical twins. That's, you know, if they're not the same being, they are of the same spirit. That's what we can definitely see. And why he's saying this is he's saying, even though it was predetermined, even though it was a predetermined portion, I'm going to take a predetermined portion. Satan said that. Allah's the one who said that Satan said that. So we know, if you read the Quran of the Muslims, that's what Allah says in his own words. He's deceiving you with your foolish pride, O Muslim. So if everything's predetermined, and your path is written, and Allah has predetermined that Satan will take you as a portion of his servants and lead you into sin via Satan's promises and his using of your desires, how have you got foolish pride? You'd only have pride if you were responsible for it. That's what pride is. Pride is something I'm responsible for, I'm really pleased about. Like if I paint a nice picture, I will have foolish pride, this is the best picture on earth ever made. But if someone else wrote the picture, I'll just go, well, that's a nice picture, but I won't have foolish pride. So we know, because he is saying Satan deceives you with your own foolish pride, there is no predetermination. Allah and Satan are working together to trick Muslims into the notion that there is foolish pride and also predetermination. Once again, you have to believe two opposing theories of the same thing in order to be a good Muslim, and it's impossible. So we know from 120, Allah is making an impossible demand of his Muslims and using Satan as a stick to beat them with when they fail, which they will, because it's impossible. And we move on from Allah's great mercy and wisdom and stupidity and underestimation of humanity. 121. Alas, to those ones, you know, the ones with the foolish pride who apostates, who were tricked by Satan, the predetermined portion that Allah made into apostates, those guys. Alas, to those ones is only shame, and their abode shall be hell and fire, a fate forever, so they shall never escape it. End of verse. So we're going back to the whole hell thing now. This is still part of the whole Satan doctrine, which is in the Quran. Alas to those ones, the apostates who become Christians, you know, the guys who leave Islam after they've known it and they've read the Quran, they understand it fully and they just don't agree with it. Those guys who then become Christians, to those is only shame, and their abode shall be hell and fire, and it's a fate forever, so they shall not ever escape it. Even though, Allah, mate, come over here, I haven't spoke to you for a while. Allah, Do you remember how you said once your covenant is ratified in Islam, i.e. when someone bows to you and becomes a Muslim and surrenders, you said they will never be able to leave? You remember that? Yeah? Why are you now talking about the portion who was predetermined who actually did leave and get away from you? And why couldn't they get away from Satan if they're able to get away from you? Are you saying Satan is more powerful than you? Is Satan actually controlling you? You go away and have a think about it. He didn't want to answer me straight away because he saw I'm a sneaky evil Jew and I'm trying to trick him with my verisimilitude. Which I'm not. I'm just asking him a fair question. But the point of the matter is, if Allah predetermines everything and nobody can escape Islam and he guides all, he said all these things are true previously. If those are true, alas to those apostates whose only thing that they're going to get is shame, and they won't be able to escape the fate of evil fire, can't be true. So we know this is Allah making many promises and stirring your desires in order to manipulate and misguide you the same way as Satan was. Satan was in line 120. We talked about Satan's misguidance, but it's the same as Allah's. Ain't that a thing? Allah and Satan are like this. They might as well be brothers or the same guy. You know, you make your mind up. So that's what it means, a fate forever, so they shall not escape it, even though they did escape from Islam when he said they wouldn't escape that. And that was a promise. So it's another broken promise, Allah. And we move on. 122. And those whom did believe in only Allah, who obeyed his commands, we shall admit those ones to the paradise. They shall flow there as mighty rivers. There they shall abide forever. Allah is true to all his promises. None are more true in word than only Allah. End of verse. Now, who has noticed Allah is repeatedly saying, trust me, bro, trust me, bro, trust me, bro, my promises are always true, I am the true guy, you have to believe me. Even though he said earlier he wrote your path and he predetermined that you would follow him. So why is he begging for you to believe his promises and protesting that his promises are more true than that other guy who doesn't exist, you know, the God who he told you doesn't exist, who creates everything? Why is he going to such pains to make sure you know Allah's promises are real, everyone else's are not? Satan and Allah are working together. If you don't believe Allah, you're going to get Satan, who's going to scare you. And if you escape from if you escape skating on skates, away from Satan, who's not on skates, then you become a Christian apostate. Apostate? If you do that, then you will have escaped all this, and this will end up being false. So what he's saying in the next verse, to make sure you don't think that's a thing, and those who did believe only in Allah, who obeyed only his commands, we shall admit those guys to the paradise. Everyone else is not getting in. They shall flow there as mighty rivers. Again, he gives away his paradise garden is not Eden, which he described as being in the heavens, because we know. How do mighty rivers flow? Down. Water flows downhill. It doesn't flow up through the sky, does it? It flows down towards the centre of the earth, the point of gravitational pull. Apart from if you're a flat earther, then you don't understand how water flows. But anyway, the point of 122 is, Allah is saying here, those who did believe only in Allah will reach his paradise, but the others won't. And then he says, they shall flow there as mighty rivers. So we know his paradise is down below the earth where Satan lives. And we know that Satan lives down there because we've read the previous book, the Gospels and the Torah, the Book of Wisdom, as described by Allah, who, remember, gave it to Moses and Abraham and also Jesus, son of Allah. But you can't remember which one he actually gave it to. So we know that he thinks that book is true. And that's where he got most of this stuff from, if you ask me. But that's just my interpretation, based on historical fact. Again, something Allah is not too fond of in his Quran of the Muslims. But anyway, that's what that means. And then he finishes off 122 by saying, Allah is true to his promises. None are more true in word than Allah. Even though we know, right at the beginning with Adam, he lies to Adam to cause original sin. That's one lie. Then he lies to Moses about the calf sacrifice to make him do a sinful calf. That's two. Then he lies to the Egyptians and said it's Moses' fault the sinful calf got sacrificed, even though he was acting under Allah's direct instructions and command. Then he tells the Egyptians that they're going to go and kill Israelites and they're going to destroy Israel swiftly. But it doesn't happen for 1600 years. That's 5 lies he's told in the first quarter of the first book. So, they are he is true to his promises is another lie. We know he's not true to his promises. He basically lies every single time. And just like he describes with Satan, he makes many promises and he stirs you with your desires, but then he deceives you using your own foolish pride. That's the reason you're going for these things, because you want to have something to be proud of. At the end of it, you're trying to get that reward. You know, the bit of cheese in the mousetrap, you're going for that. But you're never going to get it because the trap is going to spring on you, and the trap looks like that. The Quran of the Muslims, minus its cover. It disintegrated under scrutiny. That's why it's got no cover for those of you who didn't watch this morning's one. But anyway, we'll carry on. 123. But not for your desires, nor for those Jews or Christians. They do not, they do unjust evils, and by those evils we shall reward them, we being Allah and his angels. They will never find friends or helpers, only Allah shall be found by them. End of verse. So that's interesting, isn't it? I think he's getting confused about who Allah and Satan is and when one should appear and when the other should appear, because he's now talking about those apostates who are being led by Satan and also the Jews and the Christians. And he says, but not for your desires, i.e. you're not going to get into the paradise if you, apostates, Christians and Jews, follow your desires, because your desires are bad because they're not the ones I told you to have in here, the Quran of the Muslims. So you will go to the evil fire, not the paradise, because of your unjust evils, which obviously means everything you're doing that is not commanded by Allah in his Quran. And by those evils, we shall reward you. Now, who is we? Bearing in mind he said earlier in the book, Allah's angels only do good. We are supposed to think that we, like it normally does, means Allah and his angels. But I'm going to speculate here, and I'm going to insert my own interpretation that we, since we're talking about Satan in this page, means Allah and Satan together. So we shall reward them by their evils is Satan and Allah in the evil fire, rewarding the apostates, Jews and Christians by their own evils. And then he backs this up by the end of the verse 123 by saying, they will never find friends or helpers there, only Allah shall be found by them. But hang on a minute, Allah, didn't you just tell us in hell is where Satan's abode is? You said Satan's in hell all the time. You said that, Allah. You said, Allah, yourself, Satan's in hell, that's where you're sending the Jews, Christians and apostates because they didn't worship you and they didn't do what they were told. But now you're saying, and I quote, only Allah shall be found by them when they're in the hell. The Jews, Christians and apostates. So, if Satan is there, which is what you said in your book earlier and in yesterday's episode and this morning's episode, how is only Allah to be found there? Because Allah is Satan. So we fucking... ignore that swear word. We'll strike that from the record. Allah and Satan are the same being. Even Allah's telling you he's forgotten. What he should have said here is only Satan shall be found down there by them. But he's forgotten and he said only Allah's going to be found down there. So we know. While he's switching his head mask off and the horns on and off and appearing as Satan and appearing as Allah, just one after the other, and you never see them together, this line indicts him as Satan by his own admission. And I will repeat, they will never find friends or helpers in the evil fire, only Allah shall be found by them. So Allah is in the evil fire waiting for them all of the time. And this tallies with his earlier claim that his will is warring nations, that he guides you from the darkest depths, that he's going to pull you down there when you don't obey his commands. And only Allah shall be found down there. That's what this means. And we move on. 124. Whosoever does only good deeds by Allah's wishes, anyone, whilst they believe in Islam, shall be admitted to the paradise gardens, and they shall be dealt with unjustly in Allah's wrath when they did serve in their lives only Allah. So, even though it's written very confusingly, I'm going to have to unpack this one for you, because as you just heard, it's very poorly written. That's the translation, that's not me. I haven't poorly translated that. I spent a long time on this particular verse. That is how it translates. So, let's have a look. Let's break it down. And whomsoever does only good deeds by Allah's wishes, anyone whilst they believe in Islam shall be admitted to the paradise gardens. So what he's saying there is anyone who does anyone who does the good deeds by Allah's wishes, i.e. they follow the Quran of the Muslims, that's the good deeds, because remember, everything outside of this book is bad and a great evil. Anyone who is Islamic and tries to be Islamic or is a good Muslim, or is even, not a good Muslim, but then has excuses via his bullet points, those are the people by his good deeds of doing the Allah worship who shall be admitted to the paradise gardens. And they shall not be dealt with unjustly in Allah's wrath, like when they did save their lives only in Allah. So the grammar is so bad in this. This whole verse is basically saying, if you're a good Muslim, I'll send you to paradise, and you won't get Allah's wrath, i.e. when you go to hell, and Allah's also there, like he just told you a minute ago. So this is to pretty up the narrative after we've been whinging and moaning about Satan, scaring the poor kiddies with the visage of Satan, who is a scary person. Because remember, this is all the mother teaching the children. So we know. 124 means, O children of Islam, do what you're told and you'll go to paradise and you'll get your virgins. Don't do what you're told and you'll burn forever in hell with Allah. What I mean is Satan, is what he should have written. But he wrote Allah. That's what that means. So we move on to the last two, 125 and 126. And I'm going to push them together because they're both short verses and they work together. 125 to 126. So whose faith could be better than he who prostrates to Allah? Who submits to Islam and follows the religion of Abraham, friend? Remember Allah took Abraham for a friend. To Allah is the heaven and earth. All things are to him. Allah was compassing around the world and all things, brothers. End of verse. End of second verse. End of reading. So, let's decode. What does he mean by this? He starts off in 125 by saying, so whose faith could be better than he who prostrates to Allah? So what he's saying is, Allah Akbar, when you put your bum up in the air and your face in the dirt, that's you prostrating to Allah. That's how they should pray. If they're not doing this in front of people, they got their face on the floor and their butt up in the air. So whose faith is better than those guys? What he's saying here is, all the other faiths are worse in Islam. Islam's a top faith. Then he goes on. He who submits to Islam and follows the religion of Abraham is a friend. So he's trying to make out here that Abraham was the first Muslim. And actually he did tell us in his own words earlier in the book that when he went back in time after the Moses bit, he went back in time to Abraham because obviously he was reading the book of Moses and then he learnt about the existence of Abraham. So then he had to compass back in time to find Abraham and make Abraham a Muslim. And then he had Abraham do a prayer. Holy Allah, please make my son and all my sons and all their sons and everyone in future Muslims, please. And then Allah went, okay, I will. But it never happened, so it's another lie. That's how he met Abraham. But the point was, he did that to make everyone think Abrahamic means Islamic. So what he's saying here is, be Islamic, be Abrahamic. Not like those evil Jews who aren't really either thing. Remember, Allah took Abraham for a friend, so he knows. Abraham was already worshipping someone, and he's just reminding you here, if anyone argues, they're wrong. Allah himself made friends with Abraham, that's why he's important, not because of those evil Jews and Christians having their actual accurate factual history of Abraham. And then he says, to cap off the page, to Allah is the heaven and earth, all things are to he. Allah was compassing around all things, brothers. Now, why would he end on that? It's because he spent the whole page scaring the little children with visages of hell and Satan, even though he accidentally put himself in hell and said you'll only find Allah. He was meant to say Satan. He was trying to say Satan and just got it wrong, so not a mistake. So now he's saying, who could be better than Muslims? Even though I'm scaring you with Satan and Allah and saying you're going to burn in hell if you do anything wrong and you can't have musical instruments and you got to go and do the jihad, oh Muslim children. Who's better than Muslims? Even though it doesn't feel like it now, we know all the best guys in the world are Muslims. And the reason he's ending on this is because after the parents shut the book, after the mother has shut the book and stopped reading the bedtime story to Jimmy Mohammed about Satan, she's a good mother outside of Islam. She's going to want to cheer him up before bed so he doesn't have nightmares about burning in hell. So she's going to be saying, think of all the good Muslims who are great and have great lives. You'll be like those one day, son, as long as you prostrate to Allah. And that is why he ends on this. To Allah is the heaven and earth, all things be to he. Allah was compassing around all things, brothers. Brothers is what the mum is saying to her many sons. You're all brothers. So if one of you's good, all of you's going to end up good, as long as you follow this. The Quran of the Muslims minus its cover. And we reach the end of the video. So, in a quick summary, because we've run to half an hour already, believe it or not. In a quick summary, this is going to be not the last time we hear about Satan being in the cupboard of Allah and coming out when Allah commands him. So we can kind of generate a triangle of evil at this point. We've got Allah at the top, and then Muhammad and Satan are like the enforcers of the Islam faith. So Allah gives the commands but never actually appears or speaks directly to anyone, and in fact he can't. He says in his own words, he cannot interact with the world or its people directly. So he has his angels, who are unnamed, but we know two of his angels are Muhammad, who is his prophet and messenger, who then becomes an angel, and Satan, who is an angel. So Allah, Satan, Muhammad, the trinity of evil in the Quran, who enforce his will. But why would he need enforcers if he preordained every man's path? That's right, Allah gives himself away by having to have angels and enforcers because he can't interact with the world, but he wouldn't need to interact with the world if preordination worked. So we know preordination's a lie, hell with Allah in it is a lie, Allah's actually Satan, Allah being called Allah is a lie, Allah being the creator God is a lie, Adam being the king of heaven and earth, the king of Eden, and being truth, strength, beauty and knowledge, and having everyone worship him was a lie. Nobody ever worshipped Adam, he died on earth as a human with no worship, he was the one worshipping Allah according to this. Abraham being the progenitor of Islam is a lie, which is why they're called Musalems, because Musa means Moses, so we know this book was written after the book of Moses. Then they got to the bit in the book that mentioned Abraham and thought, oh, we better retcon Abraham into our Islam doctrine, which is why he turns up later. Then they got to the bit in Leviticus and Deuteronomy which describes the works of Satan in the Torah, the book of wisdom, and then that's why it goes into AL-NIISA, because Islam rips off the Torah and the Gospels and wasn't written till much later, which means Allah told another lie when he said he gave the book of wisdom to Abraham and his sons in AL-NIISA. Actually, it's in Al-Yusuf, but we'll get to that. In Al-Imran, he says he gave it to Moses, and then he later says he gave it to Jesus, son of Allah. So we know he didn't give it to any of these guys. He found it when he was Muhammad, who was clearly bewitched. And we know that if you read my articles on my website, there's tons of evidence for that. And that is the end of this video. So, a long one, but a good one. And that's the end of it. So I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all, and I will see you, lovely people, in the next one. Bye now. And did you notice how much Satan sounds like the evil wicked witch of the West? I'll get you and your little dog too, Dorothy. So anyway, that's the end of it for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow at 7:15. God bless, have a great day, and I'll see you, lovely people, in the next one. Bye now.